Okay, good evening. Thanks everyone for coming along this evening. I'd like to introduce the panel to you slowly. I'm going to start with Anna because Anna was here nice and early and you're the first one on my screen. So Anna, if you could just give a really quick introduction, just who you are, where you're based, that kind of thing, and then we will slowly work our way through the panel and say hi to everybody.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Anna Heritage Sal. I'm now 34, diagnosed at 32, and I'm based in Auckland.
Perfect. Thank you. Matthew, if you'd like to go next.
I'm Matthew. I'm 51 now. I was diagnosed when I was 49. Yeah, so it's been a bit of a long journey. Yeah.
Perfect. Amazing. Julie, you're next.
Yes, I'm Julie Morse and I am in Hawke's Bay or Central Hawke's Bay, and I was 49 when I was diagnosed, and I'm 2 years ago I was having chemo, so I'm 2 years post now. Gladly.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Julie. Joy, the lovely Joy, if you would be able to introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Joy Shivers, and I was diagnosed at the age of 73, and I live in Auckland.
Oh, perfect. Thanks so much, Joy. And Stefan.
Kia ora koutou, everyone. I'm Stephen Corbett. I was diagnosed at 46, and I'm now 53. And I've been 2 years, no evidence of disease. And I'm based in the pretty wine village of Martinborough.
Oh, man. Can we all come down there and stay with you then, Stefan? That's amazing. Okay, thank you so much. So that's our panel for this evening, and I really appreciate all of you coming on with your time and donating it to us. Stefan, I'm actually going to start with you, just as I can really. Are you able to give us a bit of a background as to what it was that kind of took you to the doctor first, what it was that you noticed first up, and kind of how that whole process kind of unraveled for you?
Thank you. Yeah, I think unraveled is the perfect description of what happened. I started getting blood in my stool and irregular bowel motions and a little bit of cramping and pain. But I was traveling a lot with work. I was on a plane every couple of months and living on plane and hotel food, and I sort of put it down to that really. And unfortunately, I delayed going to a doctor probably about 6 months more than I should have. And then I went to a doctor, a GP, and they tested my stool, and but unfortunately they only tested my stool for what they thought might be a bacterial disease or condition or something. Mm-hmm. And the test came back negative, and they said, look, it'll probably work itself out. And then I waited a few more months and went to another GP, and they said it was probably hemorrhoids and gave me some hemorrhoids cream and packed me off home. And then about 3 months later, I went to another GP. So this was sort of not another 9 months, and things were getting a bit dire. And finally, I got a GP to recommend that I go and get a colonoscopy. But he said it'd be another 6 months before we could get one because my symptoms weren't strong enough, Yeah. So he recommended that I went to a private clinic and pay $3,000, which I did. And immediately they said that I had a very large tumour, and that was what had been causing all of my grief. And they were going to get it out as fast as they could because it was nearly blocking my bowel. And from there, I went into to surgery and the hospital treatments and everything, and that all began from there, really, career. Yeah. It's a story that and I'm sure you hear over and over again, is where people delay, particularly men. They often delay, and then there's this delay at the doctor as well, and it all adds up to about a year, or around a year, and then we find ourselves years on. We find ourselves thinking, man, I wish I had have acted a little bit quicker, just so that tumour was a bit smaller, and I had to do a bit less chemo, and and you don't have the effects like potentially the tumour spreading, which was what happened with me. It spread into my lungs years later. So you're always, I don't know, you try not to knock yourself about, but you do. I do. One thing I would do differently, I would have got onto it a lot quicker if I could have. But I'm still here, so that's good.
Yeah, I've got to say, Stefan, we are incredibly pleased that you're still here and that you're doing so well. But yes, unfortunately, it is a story that I hear probably too often. People putting symptoms down, and not only just individuals putting symptoms down to something else, but also, I suppose, getting off, for want of a better word. And maybe not being taken quite as seriously as you'd like to think that they would be. I'm going to, so from there, I'm actually going to jump to Anna and ask Anna if you could share a little bit about your story and what, kind of the same kind of thing. What took you to the doctor, and what were your kind of experiences with that?
Yeah, sure. So back in 2020, it was about November-ish, I was working from home and I had this random mid-back pain come on. Totally unrelated to bowel cancer, but it's what led to my diagnosis. So I was at home, had this back pain come on. It went on for about a couple of hours. So I ended up in ED. They didn't get to the bottom of it, but it randomly disappeared. And of course, it disappeared after I'd gone through the door. So I was stuck in ED. And then all they put it down to was a possible kidney stone. So on the discharge papers, the doctors put possible kidney stone. I followed up with my GP and he said, just to be safe, let's order you a CT scan. So a couple of months later, in Feb of 2021, I went for a CT scan at Auckland Hospital, and I almost didn't go because I was really busy with work and I knew I didn't have kidney stones by that point. But I turned up and went. And lucky for me, or blessing for me in disguise, a eagle-eyed radiologist saw a shadow on my bowel. So walking in, I wasn't expecting anything, and they said, it'll take about a week for the results to be sent to your GP. So, follow up with your GP in a week. And within an hour of leaving Auckland Hospital, my GP's receptionist called me to book in for an appointment. And I was like, oh, that was pretty quick. So then I went, 2 days later, I'm sitting with a GP, and I guess he was too, trying to protect me a bit from what was going on, just going through the symptoms of bowel cancer. And I'd had, blood in my stool, but I'd had hemorrhoids before. So I waved it off, and, going through there, I could tick a few of the boxes. So within a week of that, I was having a limited colonoscopy. And they, the words I never expected. I never walked in thinking, it's still at that point, I think I was a bit naive to what the results could be. And then I could tell something was up when the doctor, his attitude, and the nurse in the room, their attitude changed. And then they waited for my husband to come up, and then they told us, we found a tumor and we're 99% sure that it's bowel cancer. It's cancerous. So, I was 32, no other known health issues at the time. And yeah, just a complete shock, and really hit home.
Wow.
Yes. So when I reflect on it, when I, speaking with a doctor now, and I reflect on it, I can tick quite a few symptoms, but I had made excuses for them, So when I had blood in my stool, again, I've had hemorrhoids before. I had been to the doctor for that previously, so never second guessed it. I had inconsistent bowel movements, but a bit of milk for me does that as well. So never second guessed it. I was quite fatigued at the time. I was on a big project at work, and we were close to a rollout date. So we were really busy and, drilling down on it, and I was getting really tired. And I'd actually knock out during my lunch break, but I was just thought, I'm so busy, I just got to get through it and power through it. But again, putting all these, when I put it all into one, you can see now that it was, my body was trying to tell me something. But at the time, I was just, putting it down to different excuses and brushing it off. Which is why now I'm so passionate now about raising awareness and being aware of the symptoms, especially when you put them all into one group and what they could be.
Yeah, it's hindsight is an amazing gift sometimes, isn't it? When we look back and we kind of go, actually, if you put all the clinical picture together, you actually do get quite a good one for your symptoms in particular, Anna. Wow, and you're doing well now, hey?
Yeah, so I was really lucky. So everything after the colonoscopy moved quite quickly. Within 2 weeks of that, I had surgery to remove the tumor. They removed between about 10 to 12 centimeters of bowel, and we were able to reconnect the bowel. And testing showed that it was stage 2. So there was no further spread, and so basically now back to full health. Blessing in disguise, I didn't have to go through chemo. And back to full health. We caught it early enough before it progressed here. And now I just have the surveillance screening. So the CT scans, 18 months, every 18 months, and colonoscopies.
Yeah, amazing. Wow, thank you. Wow, it's interesting. It's so interesting listening and just kind of hearing the pictures that you kind of put together, and I hope that when others are listening to this, they kind of go and take stock and maybe have a think about what it is that might be going on within their own bodies. Joy, you have quite an interesting and quite a different story, and it's one that I think a lot of other people are going to kind of listen to and respond to in a completely different way. And I love the fact that you kind of persisted with a lot of your screening as well, and kind of got your diagnosis and things like that. So are you able to share how your story came about?
Sure. And first of all, I want to say I had zero idea that I had any issue with my bowel. There were no symptoms that I can even reflect back on. And at the age of, and the story is actually between two countries in terms of treatment and what was going on. About 2007, when I was 60, I think it was around that time, I had my very first colonoscopy here in New Zealand, and it was clear. And around 2012, 2013, New Zealand bowel cancer screening first started out west in Auckland. And I had a doctor here in New Zealand and doctors in the US, but the doctor in New Zealand signed me up for that screening. So each year when I came back, I would send in the sample, and each year I would get a clear reading, which was really good. And in the States, the doctors started to give me a bit of a hard time, because it had been about 12 years since I had had the last colonoscopy. And I said, no, I'm not anxious to go back for any of those. And she said, well, we have a screening in the United States called Cologuard, and it does it looks at the DNA. And I said, okay, well, I'll take that. And that came back positive. So she said, okay, you're going to have a colonoscopy. So I went ahead and had a colonoscopy there, and they found 3 precancerous polyps. And they said, we'll see you in 3 years. And that was in 2019. And early 2020, I came back to New Zealand just to get things in order to move here in 2020. And while I was here, the very last screening kit was waiting for me here in New Zealand. And I thought, do I need to bother with this? And because of my age, it was the last one I was going to get. So I thought, well, okay, I'll go ahead. And so I sent in the kit, and about 2 days before I was leaving to go back to the States, they called me and said, you have blood in the sample, you need a colonoscopy. And I said, no, I had one last year, I'm fine. And by the way, I'm flying out a couple of days, I'm off to the United States. And off I flew, and then the world shut down. So I did ask the doctors in the US, why would New Zealand pick up blood in my sample when you did a colonoscopy, just 10 months before or so? They thought about it, they went into committee and they came back and they thought hemorrhoids, there were all kinds of excuses. Don't worry, Joy, we'll see you in 3 years. So that was in March when everything shut down. And then I finally moved to New Zealand in September 2020. And November 2020, lo and behold, the New Zealand Bowel Cancer Screening Program called me. And because I was staying with my sister and that was the contact I had. And they said, you need to come in for a colonoscopy. We've been hunting down the last group of people since lockdown. And I said, no, I really don't need one. Look, I'll send you all my medical records. And then they got them, they read them, they called me back and they said, we would still like you to have a colonoscopy. And I said, well, you know what? I participated in your screening and I should continue. I should at least give you the final results. So in I went for my colonoscopy and I woke up and someone's taken blood out of my arm and my sister had come to the hospital with me. Someone else is wanting to give me a cup of tea and then I'm asked to go into this little room and the doctor explained that they found a 3-centimeter tumor, but it was sessile. It wasn't a polyp. And the sessile, of course, lies flat against the colon wall. And that was on a Thursday. And so on the Friday, the surgeon's office called, set up an appointment to come in and explain to me that I actually was anemic. I had no idea. And they needed to prepare me for surgery right away. And so I had to have an infusion and all the tests, blah, blah, blah. And within the week, I was in surgery. When I came out, they'd taken 24 lymph nodes. They were all clear. And the tumor had not breached the wall. It was in there, but it hadn't breached it. And I was stage 1 or 1B, somewhere around there. So, you can have no symptoms. And so I think the important message for me was that it is important to go and get these colonoscopies on a regular basis. If I had waited the 3 years, if I'd still been living in the United States, I think I would have been having chemo by now. And definitely be at a later stage. So that's my story. Even though you have no symptoms, do get testing.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing when those little test kits come through the post, they take moments to do. Pop in the envelope and send them back, but they can actually be life-saving and life-changing. For getting on to, precancerous polyps, as well as, kind of bowel cancers and things like that. So amazing. Thank you, Jo. I'm so glad you came back to New Zealand and followed up with that.
I always say, New Zealand saved my life, right?
We'll take that.
I did write to the doctor. I did send a note to the doctor in the US to say, you missed something. She wrote back and she said, are you having chemo? And I thought, I'm not even going to go there.
Amazing. Well, like I say, we will take that. And we are incredibly pleased that you came back to New Zealand and actually were caught so early and are doing so incredibly well now. So,
thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Matt, I'm going to come to you now because you're next on my little lineup. Because your story is yet again another one of those kind of interesting ones where it's a good idea for people to take notice. So
Yeah. Well, about June, July 2021, I was feeling quite fatigued. So I went to my GP and she did some blood tests and they came back I was low on B12. So I had around a B12 injections over a few months and I sort of came right for a little while, um, but I just wasn't quite right. So I went back to my GP and I saw a new one and he decided that he'd do a full blood test. He did a full round of bloods. He did a gastro down my throat and a colonoscopy. But the gastro one came back clear. But they found a hiatus hernia. So just to add that to the collection. But the colonoscopy, he was in there for a while and he couldn't quite get to the end of my bowel. So he called in the surgeon and asked him if he was seeing what he thought he was seeing. And the surgeon said, yeah, it is. And it was just a little tumour right at the end of my bowel. So he wasn't too concerned about it. He said, look, we'll book in for surgery, get it taken out, and around the chemo, and you should be all right. So that was in the middle of October 2021. But yeah, they did a scan to find out the size of the tumour, and about 2 weeks later, I was at home and I was having horrendous abdominal pains. I couldn't eat, I couldn't go to the toilet, and I was just feeling really, really sick. So I went to A&E. This was on the 31st of October, and they actually booked me in for surgery on the 10th of November. So they did an ultrasound on my abdomen, and they found out I had a blocked bowel. So they admitted me to hospital. And 2 days later, I had surgery, and they took out part of my bowel with the tumour. But when I woke up, I asked him how the surgery went, and he said, "Yeah, the surgery was we got the small tumour out, the big tumour in my bowel." Then he said, "But," and when you hear "but," you sort of you get a bit okay. What else he got? And he said, "You have a secondary tumour that's growing outside the bowel wall, and it's wrapped around." And it's wrapped around, sorry.
Okay.
And it's wrapped around some of your blood vessels. So he said, there's nothing more we can do. And he said, you better go home and say goodbye to your family. And he gave me pretty much 3 to 6 months if I was lucky. And that was a bit hard to hear. So so I sort of went, so I was doing my will at my bedside because I knew, I didn't have long. It could, I didn't know if it was going to be a week or, but no, I went home and I decided I just needed to make the most of what I got left. And yeah, thankfully, with the chemo, I'm still here. So yeah, and that was so that was November 2021. So I'm still here, still kicking, and the last 3 scans I've had have been no detectable cancer. So I'm so quite blessed. And lucky. But symptoms wise, I had no blood in my stool. All I had was just a little bit of fatigue, just feeling tired. not being able to not being able to do as like a full week's work. Otherwise, I'd have to have a day off during the week. But yeah, my main symptom was just feeling tired and fatigued, and I had absolutely no idea that it could be bowel cancer or anything like that. I just thought, like I'm anemic anyway, so I've ever since I was a kid, I've dealt with anemia, and I just thought it had something to do with that. But no, when they told me that I was when they told me that it was bowel cancer, I just I just couldn't believe it. It was just, really? Are you serious? And I had it's stage 4. I had a 11 mil spot on my liver as well, which they were quite concerned about as well, because it was quite a good size spot. So, but my liver spot's gone. There's no sign of the liver spot. And no detectable cancer for the last few scans. So so that's been really good. Yeah. So that's my story.
Oh, amazing. And it's another one where I'm so pleased that you pushed and your doctor kind of took you seriously and actually got some got what we very politely call a top and tail done for you. So that you got onto that. But that must have been the worst conversation ever, to kind of wake up and have that kind of sentences put over your head.
Yeah, it was I sort of knew something was up when he walked in. He for a surgeon, it said, oh yes, we got a success, sort of smile on his face. But he came in, he didn't look like it was good news that he was about to tell me. So
Another one, I'm very pleased that you're still here, that you're doing so incredibly well. You've responded so well to the chemotherapy, and to have a couple of clear scans now, gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, well, by February, my February scan 2022, the tumour was gone. So, even my oncologist, he was lost for words. He didn't know what to say. He was he just looked at me when I walked in, and I thought, oh no, something's not right. Yeah, I was sort of like, oh shoot, and he just looked at me and he said, it's gone.
Wow.
I said, it's gone. What's gone? And he said, your tumour. He found it hard to say the words. He just said, it's gone. It's just, and he showed me the scan I'd had, in October, and then he showed me that one there, and he showed me where it was, and you could see there was no mass. It was just
Wow. Love me a happy ending.
I had a celebratory drink that night. I just had a glass of wine with my wife.
Oh, I can imagine. I would have had probably more than one, but and so thanks so much, Matt. That is such an amazing story. And Julie, I know your story. We've had some good chats over the little while. So talking of good ending, really happy endings and things like that, it would be amazing to hear your story and where you're up to now.
Okay, hopefully. Sorry, I have got a bit of a cough, so I'm really hoping to keep that under control. I was feeling a bit tired, and I felt that I had Again, blood in my stool. I went to my doctor, and I have to say, normally my doctor would be really proactive in getting lots of scans and things. But this particular time, this was October 2020, and he said, you're young. I was 49 at the time, so you're a bit young, and also you can sort of tear a bit and there'll be a bit of blood, and so basically unless it's really black we wouldn't really be too concerned. And I thought, oh, okay. So I came home and I thought things had been the bowel motions had changed over time. And if I'm being really honest, because I know we've all kind of been through it, it was probably the shape of them and the smell. The smell had got horrific. And so I really took note after that. And then I went back to the doctors in December, and I got a different doctor. I couldn't get my normal doctor. And I said, I'm exhausted and I definitely have blood in my stool. So she said, all right, we'll send you off to a specialist, get your blood tests. So I went to the specialist and they immediately booked me in for an iron infusion because my iron was so low. And I had a top and tail, as Matthew said. And I remember, so that was, I had a week between that. And then this was just after Christmas. And so I went through Christmas knowing that I had the scan coming up on the 29th. And I was like, oh no. But yeah, so there was a lot of, and I didn't know too much about colonoscopies then, and the top one as well. So I remember having the colonoscopy, and I remember being awake enough to say, that doesn't look good, when he got to a particular point. And he said, no, it doesn't. And I thought, well, that's great. So we finished that, and I finished the consult, and I could tell that something, I knew what was coming because we went off to a separate room, and I could hear him giving other people just little bits of, you've got a swollen esophagus, or, so I could hear bits and pieces. But when we got directed to another room. And so in one way I knew, but hearing those words, it's like having your feet taken out from underneath you. And then there's just so much at that time, there's just so much to take in at that moment. But yeah, so we're about 35 minutes from Hastings. So we drove home, and there was lots of tears and then quiet moments, and then tears and quiet moments. And yeah, so from there we went, and he just said straight away after the colonoscopy, you've definitely got bowel cancer. It wasn't even, we think, this is just what it is. So yeah, I went straight into, I had radiation. I had intense radiation. They said, well, because of your age, we'll give you 1 week intense instead of 25 sessions. So we went to Palmerston North for that. And then a week later, I had surgery, and then they took out 24 nodes, and cancer was found in 1 node. So that meant I was going down the chemo track, and we went through 6 rounds of chemo. It was meant to be 12, but I was doing really well. And so they switched it down to 6. And like I say, that was 2 years ago. And it's probably, if I'm really honest, it's probably taking me this 2 years before I actually feel well enough to take on more, because it's just that recovery. Yeah, so that was my sort of, but I guess the big thing with me was I decided that I was going to go on this journey, but rather than being dragged through it, I was going to do things a little bit my way as well. So we had a bit of fun with the chemo. I've got shirts made that had little quotes on them, and some of them were funny and some of them were a bit more serious. And during the chemo, all I did was listen to and watch comedy the whole way through all my chemo, because there were 5-6 hours of chemo. And yeah, so I did lots and lots of comedy, and that was great for me. So there was lots of laughter for me during and then there was lots of sleep, because I would sleep after the chemo for quite a while. Yeah. So yeah, that's my story. So yeah, diagnosed 2020, whole of 2021 was taken up with treatment, basically.
Wow. Yeah. No, your t-shirts were quite inspiring.
Yeah.
Would you like to share what 1 or 2 of them actually had on them, Julie?
Yeah, there was. Oh God, I have to remember now. I mean, there was the last chemo day. I'd have to pull them out now. I've got photos of them all, but yeah, I'd have to try and I'd have to pull them out to get the wording right. Yeah. Yeah.
One day maybe we can auction them off for you.
Now they're my gardening ones. It's kind of like, yep, did that journey. So now, it's good.
Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you. And look, thank you everyone for sharing your stories and being so open and so honest about, kind of what took you to where, how you got your diagnosis and things like that. And the fact that you're all doing really well at the moment is actually really good. Hearing the story that, like I say, not everyone's diagnosed with bowel cancer is going to be terminal, or it's not always the death sentence that it possibly has been in the past. I had a question come through which I'm going to put to all of you, and you can fight over who answers it, but it'd be quite nice to have an answer from all of you. It's actually from someone working within the sector, within the kind of that whole endoscopy screening kind of way, and they're just wanting to know if you're happy to share anything that you recall that either the nurses or doctors did at either the time of your colonoscopy or diagnosis that was kind of life-changing, either that it was something really positive that they had done to make it kind of easier for you, or something negative, something that other health professionals and others of us, and just kind of for people in general who are potentially going to be experiencing or have experienced colonoscopies, and that getting that news delivered to them. What were some of the highlights and or lowlights that you found with that? So like I say, you can fight over who answers first, but it'd be nice to hear from all of you.
Shall I go first?
There you go.
Okay, I'll go first. I'll volunteer. Yeah, for me, I found the whole process, even though they were looking for what was wrong, I actually found the whole process quite in a way reassuring. The nurses I had were really, really good, and even when the guy doing it was having trouble, because he was taking a little bit longer than he should be, which one of the nurses said, it is taking a little bit longer. And when he asked for the surgeon to come in to help him, I was feeling quite stressed, because usually a procedure like that, when they ask someone to come in and help, it's it's not straightforward and routine. But the nurses that were there with me, she actually said to me that you've got a longer bowel, and they can't get right to the end of the bowel, so he's just getting the surgeon to come and have a look just to help him. And then the guy did it, said, look, we think we've found something. I'm just getting the surgeon just to check, just to see if it is what I have found. So during the whole process, they were sort of open with me as well. They weren't trying to hide anything. And even afterwards, when the surgeon came in and talked to me, he was quite reassuring for me. And I found the whole process quite, well, not easy, but it was a really relaxed atmosphere, and that's what I found. That's what I found reassuring. So, yeah.
Cool. I love to hear that nurses were really good, but that's just
awesome.
That's
yes, no, they were really, really good.
Amazing.
So
amazing.
That's cool. Yeah.
What about anyone else involved in the panel? What were your experiences like?
Yeah, I found one of the things that I found really good was when I spoke to my surgeon the first time. He said to me, this is an everyday thing for us, but we understand that it's not for you, you know, because they're dealing with bowel cancer every day and we're sitting there terrified. And so he just said, take as much time as you need and ask as many questions as you want. And so that was really good. That was my positive. I think one of the lower points for me was when I had my final day of chemo, and then I had the pump as well. So we used to go back on the Friday and get the pump taken off. And they don't have in Hawke's Bay here, they don't have a bell because they're trying to juggle between those that are doing well on their journey and those that may not. So they don't have the bell to ring. But on my very last day, I had a relieving nurse there, and I had none of the nurses that I had seen over the previous 3 months were there. And I actually went out to the car and I just cried because it was like this momentous moment that you had finished chemo and there was just no one there that knew you. It was a really low point for me, which is, you know, a little bit selfish, I suppose, but that I remember sitting in the car crying, thinking, why is no one celebrating this big moment for me? You know, like it was that, yeah. But along the way, I had wonderful team here in Hawke's Bay. We had a wonderful team and the ones in Palmy. I couldn't fault. It was just lovely. Yeah, it was great.
Well, I mean, it is it's a huge thing coming to the end of of treatment and things like that. So I can imagine you feeling a little bit remarkably deflated that your usuals weren't there to kind of celebrate that with you.
I think about my experience when I was waiting for the colonoscopy. It was early in the morning and I was watching the staff going by, and I saw a pair of sneakers go by that looked a bit rumpty and a tousled hair doctor, and I thought to myself, I hope that's not my doctor. And it turned out to be my doctor, but he was a good doctor because he found that tumor, in a very awkward place. And so I kind of laughed about that. And I liked that they give you paper panties, for privacy. And there was a sense of humor. We get on the table and he said, now my assistant's going to come by with a very large pair of scissors and cut those off. So there was humor in the process. And with the surgeon, they were very kind. They handled things really well. I never expected I'd have to walk the halls to get to the surgery and jump on the table. But what I did do was I tucked $5 in the surgery sock. And I said, you do a good job, you get a tip. So he didn't take the tip money, but he still did a good job. So I kind of approached it as it was all rather fascinating for me that my body was doing these things and then other people were doing things to me. So I just had a lot of curiosity about it through the whole process and kept a sense of humor.
I love that, rumpty shoes. That's awesome. Anna or Stefan, how did you find your kind of that initial phase, that kind of endoscopy kind of stage, and were there highlights or lowlights for either of you?
Yeah, I can talk a bit about my experience. I guess one of the highlights of me, and I mentioned it before, was one of the radiographer that did my CT scan initially, looking for the kidney stones that noticed the shadow. I did send him an email after just to tell him the results and how I was doing, and that he basically changed the course of my life, and just said, keep doing what you're doing. You noticed a shadow, and you did what he's trained to do. When I went for my the first limited colonoscopy that I had. I had and again, this is me being naive to what I was walking into. I wrongfully had said no to the drugs. Never say no to the drugs. Never say no to the drugs. And so I went in and I had I remember the doctor he was quite a young doctor, a very, very young doctor, but I had an older nurse. And during the procedure, again, with no drugs, and them trying to navigate the tumor, and lucky I was the last procedure for the day, because I remember screaming the room down, and lucky no one after me could hear what was happening. But I could hear them saying, like biopsy, telling her to take biopsies. And then after it finished, the room just went silent. No one spoke to me. And I was lying there and I was like, I know they've obviously found something. And the nurse like the doctor something, and he was like, flag them all urgent. And again, I'm just lying there, like no one said anything to me. And so then they came, I can't remember who, but they came, we'll call your husband to come up and we'll talk to you. And I was like, oh, you can just tell me now. Rather than trying to, they keep saying, oh, no, we'll just wait for your husband, which, playing it down. And I was like, look, I've obviously read the room. Just tell me now, just hit me with it. And then I got a bit emotional because they kept pushing back and I kept pushing back, like I want to know now. So I guess, and then when my husband eventually came up, because, again, I wasn't expecting much, and he was parked out in the car park, and I had to tell him to come up, and I didn't want to flag him as well, that, that something had obviously been found, and I just told him to make his way up. And so, as any typical male does, he takes his time coming up. So it took about 20 minutes for him to come up. And then, when we sat down again, the doctor was very young, and the message was delivered, I want to say bluntly, but, he stuck to the facts. And, I guess, when you get a bit of more experienced doctor, he can paint a bit of a picture and, create a bit of hope. And I guess the message was just delivered, we found a tumor, and it's, we're 99% sure it's cancer until we test it and can say it's definitely cancer. So I guess for me, it was, in the room itself was, a bit more of a reassurance during the diagnosis, or, especially when all I was hearing was biopsy, flag it all urgent, and then dead silence. And then especially when you're delivering that message, we found a tumor. Those words are etched in my head, and just how it was delivered. There's no easy way to deliver it. I don't know if there's any easy way to deliver it, but I don't know, padding it a bit with a bit more. I don't know how you deliver it really, but I just felt it was quite very.
Where'd she go? Oh, there she's back again. You vanished for a moment, Anna. Yeah, sometimes, blunt can be good for some people, but sometimes there just needs to be a little bit of a softening. I don't know if that's the word you were looking for. Just I don't know. Sometimes there's softer ways of putting it. Stefan, what about you? It looks like we've got a couple of questions coming up.
Yeah, look, first of all, I must say, I was diagnosed and treated in Wellington Hospital through the public system. I have an immense respect for everyone in that pressure, and at pretty low pay, doing everything they can to save our lives, and dealing with some pretty serious stuff. And so I appreciate the New Zealand working as absolutely hard as they can. And I did have my times. I've had, I don't know, 7 or 8. And I've had different experiences. I just wish that at the time it really mattered, at a time when would make a difference. My GPs had been, I wish the first GP I'd got and told them I had blood in my stool, cramps and fatigue and changed bowel motions. I wish they had been aware enough to just tick the box on cancer, not be too aware, but be unafraid of just bring it me as much as they could, and that's that's a real aim of of Bowel Cancer New Zealand is to raise that awareness in us and raise that awareness in our GPs. That can to talk about it and to diagnose it when it needs. You know, overall, full of awe and respect for the health system and people who work with it. GPs were much better educated in BC than they are now.
Yeah. Well said. Really nice. It is, you know, kind of what we want to be about is raising that awareness and normalizing conversations around an everyday occurrence. You know, we all go every day, and just raising that awareness around knowing what your own normal is, so that you know when it's not normal. And also within the, you know, that whole health sector is just making them aware that, you know, people can be diagnosed. It doesn't matter what their age, it doesn't matter what their stage, it doesn't matter where they live. You know, anyone can be diagnosed. And I think that you guys in particular have shown that, you know, it's anyone at any stage, at any time, you know, that can be diagnosed. And sometimes there'll be a raft of symptoms and it won't be until later when you look back and you go, oh, actually, and sometimes there really won't be any. But it's being aware of what's actually going on within your body, and you know, taking up things like the screening when it's offered. You know, that's amazing. We do have a couple of questions, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to stop recording, just so that the questions can be answered freely. So I'm just going to hit the stop button. And thank you so much, everyone. But please do all stay online just for a moment.